Hello. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. There are some seats in the front. Please come and take them. There are some seats in the middle. There are some benches in the middle. Thank you so much. My name is Zainab Salbi. I am the co-founder of Daughters for Earth, and I have the pleasure of co-hosting this event with my dear friend, Elise Nelson, CEO and president of Vital Voices. Woo! Elise and I agreed that I will open us and she will close us, and then we'll have some intervals of poetries in between. Before I start, I want to acknowledge so many people who have made this event possible. I want to acknowledge Vital Voices team. I want to acknowledge Daughters for Earth team. And we have Lena Cole, a New Yorker, who brought us trees and the flowers and said, what's the point? We cannot talk about climate change without the presence of nature, no matter where we are. So she literally schlepped them from her apartment or wherever she is, and she brought them here this morning. So thank you so much, Lena. So let's just take a pause, center us in our hearts. Take one of the colleagues I work with at Daughters for Earth, Caro Garcia, she said a lot of the interventions that we're talking about in climate change has godlike power, but not godlike wisdom. And it's so true. So true. There is so much money and energy that's going to all the technologies. 98% of all funding is going to technology, geothermal engineering, all of things. Things may work or may not work. But the things that we know it works, which is the protection of this earth, of nature, which just by protecting it contributes to 37% of climate mitigation, gets 1% of funding. One. And the things and the people who know that the interventions is not about extracting from nature and having this power that is human-centered, that actually the people who know that the solutions are relational to each other and to nature, which is women, are getting 0.02% of all climate funding, right? So at Daughters for Earth, we've been in the business of finding funding and celebrating women at the grassroots level, at the community levels, who are working on climate mitigation and actions. And what we have discovered in only 3 years of funding of about more than 200 women in 50 countries, and working with them, and some of them are here. Please, I don't know, if you're a Daughters for Earth, please raise your hand so people can see you. Amazing women, honestly. Daughters, mothers, sisters who are loving this earth. As Alice Walker said, she said, I am going down with this earth. I'm not going to Mars. I don't know about you, but I'm staying in this earth as well. I'm being buried here, right? But what we're seeing is a pattern that when women are intervening in any actions, you'll hear all kinds of solutions today and all kinds of actions. It's relational. It is anchored in our connection and respect to nature. And it's from that anchoring and centering nature at the solution Then what we notice, there is a pattern in behavior here. They're bringing the communities together and shifting behavior. They're bringing local economies together and shifting local economic behavior. They bring new education, and you're seeing actually radical shifts on the ground that are anchoring a new relationship to nature, including a spiritual one, including a mental health one and a physical health one, including financially healthy one. But it is a different relationship. It is not extractive. It is reflective. It's respectful. It's loving. It is truly loving. And I am just really touched and honored. And in a very depressing world, what I have, the light of hope I have in my heart, it is because of all the women who are doing the work that they are doing. And so thank you all. Thank you all. Now, we have, I look at this morning as a crash course for those of us who don't know as much about the issue, and for those of us who know and want to meet others and understand what are the other areas, because you cannot be an expert on all issues. So look at the panels are going to move very fast. 20 minutes each discussions. We're going to look at how climate is impacting women. We're going to look at the solutions that are happening. We're going to look at fossil fuel. We're going to look at the oceans. We're going to look at financials. It's like a crash course really fast to give you a snippet of not only the core issues, but also that core issue from a woman's perspective. You know, my life changed after meeting Sylvia Errol and understanding the ocean and the depth of the ocean. And she'll tell us a little bit today also. So it's going to be a snippet of all of that. If you like the issue, go deeper in it. If you want to engage, ask the people. But we need to mobilize all women, because this earth, this beautiful, beautiful, beautiful earth, needs us all to rise up for her and for us, to be honest. And I want to thank you for wearing the keffiyeh, because I can no longer be in alignments with my life. Knowing that there are starved people and there is so much fighting going on, we no longer are in alignment if we do not, it's all interconnected. No fighting, the protection of the earth, peace, is all interconnected story. It is not a separated story. So thank you. Connie Nielsen was supposed to join us today. This is my last announcement. She's in production. For those who have not seen, what is the movie she's in? Hold on. Help me. The movie Connie Nielsen is. It's huh? Gladiator. Please watch Gladiators. They are working on another Gladiator. Thank you. I'm a menopausal woman. I have issues of memory. So Gladiator. So thank you. She apologizes for really not being able to do. I do encourage you all to check out her Human Needs Project, which works on regenerative agriculture for Kenyan women. And last but not least, allow me to introduce our first panelists, women surviving and thriving in extreme heats. We have amazing panels, but I will let our moderator, Maggie McGrath, editor at Forbes Magazines, to introduce everyone. So thank you. Where is Maggie? Okay, here, Maggie. Please come in, and please, the moderators come in. Please.
Wait for everyone to come up and so I am joined on stage. Well, actually, we love our numbers at Forbes. So I'm going to share with you a number that you may not have known, because I didn't know this. This was surprising to me. As of May of this year, 2025, roughly half of the world's population, that's 4 billion people, had experienced at least 30 days of extreme heat in the prior 365. So we're going to talk about what that means, why it is that women are disproportionately affected, and also what are the solutions. So I am joined by 3 really groundbreakers, and I'm going to read their titles and their bios briefly for you. So we have Kathy Boffman McLeod, there we go. I'm going to use first names. Kathy is the CEO of Climate Resilience for All. She brings a record of executive leadership and impact for public, nonprofit, and private sector institutions. You'll be talking a lot about what we can do collectively. Next, we have Mariam, who is the founder and chief executive of, can you pronounce your Huendo Kor? Based in Pakistan, the organization focuses on holistic, integrated, and inclusive approaches for gender integration in community development work, focusing on girls' education, poverty reduction, and women's economic empowerment. And finally, last but not least, we have Rima, the director of the Self-Employed Women's Association of India, SIWA. Rima has been working with SIWA for over 39 years and has expanded its membership to more than 3 million members. It is the largest single union of informal sector female workers. Let's have an applause for our panelists. So we say that heat, extreme heat, disproportionately affects women, but I would love to know what that means practically and specifically through the lens of each of your work. How does this manifest? What does it look like? Kathy, I'll start with you.
Women are physically disproportionately impacted and disproportionately impacted by socioeconomic and cultural factors. And so we know that women are already getting the short end of the stick. But when we see and don't see an invisible threat like extreme heat, it results in things like market women in informal markets in Freetown losing 60% of their income to extreme heat. It means that pregnant women are losing their babies working in the heat. It means that women who have to take care of their kids are not taking night shifts that have been shifted to when the temperatures are cooler, and they're losing an entire shift of income. And so extreme heat is pushing women further into poverty, and it is invisible and silent. And so the number one thing we need to do is understand that, and there are many, many solutions.
Thank you very much. I'm very honored to be here. And as you already said, our work is related to reach the unreached, and the most unreached are women in all sectors. It is not just climate. It is, when you talk about poverty, the poorest are the women. When you talk about education, almost all education indicators are, lowest indicators are women. And so it is like whenever after some time there is a buzzword, now it is climate, and climate has actively impacted very negatively on the life of women, because women are at the forefront. Women are addressing issues. Women are solution oriented. Women are always resilient. All their lives they are trained, solve the problem, come up to be proactive. So I think our work involves a lot of mobilizing women, and in the rural far-flung area, that area which prone to disaster, man-made disaster, as well as natural disaster, floods, earthquake, and militarization, and all these problems. And then women, working with women, we realize that they are not heard, their feelings, their emotions, they are not included. And so our work involves them to mobilize them, their leadership comes to fore, and then that indigenous solution come up with indigenous CRA help have been now in 3 districts. Northwest part of Pakistan is bordering Afghanistan. And you ask about Khandukur. Khandukur is a Pashto word, and it means home for sister, sister's
Home
home.
for sister.
So, that means that women themselves have to come together and support, despite the differences, despite the difference of opinion, despite the cultural different, contextual different, women have to come together and support each other. Otherwise, divided we are here, and I think this is opportunity provided here also, and through the area that we are working with different stakeholders, not only women group, government department. politicians, scientific research, all this they're trying.
Actually, I have a question about public-private partnerships a little later on, but Rima, what is your experience in terms of how extreme heat disproportionately affects women specifically and practically?
Let me start by what our founder Ela Bhatt always told, and which still holds true, is that poverty is a form of violence with the consent of the society. And I think it's the climate change which is further compounding this violence on women. And as Kathy was saying, let me bring some of our members. I speak here on behalf of our 3.2 million women workers. And these women are vendors or hawkers selling fruits, vegetables, other eatables, or cutlery items on the streets. The ground is heated. There's 52 degrees centigrade. Her produce is getting spoiled. The customers are not coming. And still the grind of work is killing her. And that's the reality of the informal sector workers, which are construction workers, waste collectors and recyclers, small farmers, agriculture workers, salt pan workers, home-based workers. Let me bring another member. She's a construction worker, and it was 53 degrees centigrade of heat. And there was no shelter where she could take rest for even 10 minutes. The tools that she works with were hot, really hot, and she still had to lift them up and carry. The sand she carried on her head was really hot, and the cement bags were hot, so she had blisters in her hand, and yet she had to continue climbing 5 floors to take that sand up and the cement up the 5 floors. There was no water that she could keep herself hydrated, cold water. So whether it was hot water that she drank or hot tea made no difference. And yet she has to continue working in that 53 degrees of sweltering heat, and she fainted and fell down. And that's where she lost her work for 3 days. 3 weeks. And, therefore she was forced to go to moneylenders because there was no way otherwise she could avail of healthcare services because your income has completely stopped. She pulled out her 2 young daughters from school. There was no money to pay their fees, and there was no money to pay the electricity bills, and here she was, and therefore she had to go to a money lender. She could not continue repaying, and therefore the terms that the money lender asked, I wish no woman would have to go through that. It's the sexual abuse that she had to undergo in front of her young daughters and her husband. This is what heat is. Our members keep saying that if there's a flood, there's a visible destruction. If there's a cyclone, there's a visible destruction. But the heat is the one which you only have to experience and bear, and the kind of humiliation, the kind of loss of dignity and self-respect it brings.
It's a cascade. Oh,
I just wanted to, first of all, that's so powerful. You know what a softie I am. Power of the women in this room to understand it and bring the attention, the resources, the support, and the solidarity. There are 772 million women right now facing extreme heat with these conditions. And Climate Resilience for All, our mission is to support and protect the health, the income, and the dignity of women on the front lines of extreme heat. We, working with partners, SEVA, and others, devise an insurance that supports this construction worker when it's so hot she can't work. A payment goes to her bank account to support and supplement her income. And the solutions, there are many that reduce the risks, but this specific solution, which I know we just have 20 minutes, and Zainab, you were very clear, give everybody a bite of just an amuse-bouche for this issue. It's powerful, but I want to make sure to get the solution in, and I don't want to give it back to you. But first of all, it's powerful, and you have to move through the sadness of this and get past it quickly and get to solutions and money. And these women are incredible.
Kathy, it's these very women who give us the needed strength and courage. Look at the resilience of the women that I have been talking about. You know, they do not want charity. What they want is, an enabling support and an environment which helps them earn the life of dignity and self respect. And I think to what you wanted to ask us about the public private partnership, and I think we are so fortunate to have Kathy and CRA and her team as our members. I think it's when you come and experience it yourself, whether it's for a day or 2 days, it makes you really understand that what insurance is a completely alien concept for the poor women. They felt that how can insurance ever be there, and that too, and heat insurance and parametric was a new thing for us as a union as well for SEVA. What is this parametric insurance? And we started with a small number of 20,000 women, and today we have 245,000 women paying 50% of the premium. That's the power of the parametric insurance.
And actually, we'll get to the public private partnerships, but that story that you told produces so much grief. And yesterday, I had the privilege of interviewing Jane Goodall, and we talked about eco grief. And I think grief can be paralyzing because it makes us feel helpless and hopeless. So, solutions like insurance products that can help protect in the cascading effect of heat, right? It's not just the heat that you heard about, it's all the after effects that then affect a woman's bottom line. So, we heard insurance. Miriam, I'd like to go to you first on this question. What is a good example of a female led climate resilience, heat resilience solution that you've seen in your work?
I think it's like because climate is not restricted to one sector, like it is multidimensional. It affects each and every aspect of life. And I think that we should not be looking at, if women are working in remote areas in small group, we should be looking at it as one woman movement and being consolidated uh, at, at at international level. So there are many simple example of women working for climate resilience naturally indigenously, because there is indigenous knowledge already existing with women who practice in these. But I think climate change coming in a big way has taken away even that information, even that knowledge. So women are making effort, but help, external help like NGOs like ours and other NGOs with aware and informed and reaching out to women, listening to their feeling, listening to their issues, listening to the solutions which they are coming up. Only such models have been working. Just research based done detachedly is not working. It has to be working directly with the village women and mobilizing them. And so we have several little examples. Garbage, managing the garbage, that solution. They have the solution of menstrual reusable, a sanitary towel that, uh, as I said, are part of a lot of migration, climate-induced migration is taking place because of scarcity. So there are, but these models at the scale level has yet to come, because climate as a concept is not fully understood. But efforts are being made, and then at national and with the CRA's help, we have come up um, one who's there in identifying the issue, analyzing the issue, then how to reach, because traditionally very difficult to reach women and engage them, muster the support, the women leadership. But it is viable because we and it's come forward floods. You have heard that we have massive floods, and because of that, the whole society is shaken up. And so when there are problems, there are also solutions. So we are hoping that that will create more conducive environment that women are engaged, because all development policy lack women in decision making, and then when we talk in a conference about any conference, they say data, gender disaggregated data of climate impact women is missing, and their role or informal role in household chores, many handicaps that women are faced, but small projects in I look at it as a women empowerment process. I look at it as a women not divided.
There were a lot of good solutions in what you just said. So, just to kind of summarize, we heard insurance, we heard garbage, we heard menstrual recycling, but you also talked about I'm totally abbreviating. Again, this is a taste, right? But something important that I heard in your comments just there is the importance of starting from the ground up, not top down imposition of structures. Which this leads into my question about public-private partnerships, because I think there can be a danger for a corporation, a local government, a big government to come in, impose ideas, and then it doesn't work. So, Kathy, I'll start with you. How do you think about the most effective way to engage in these partnerships, or is it better just to go full grassroots and not engage other constituents?
No, we need every sector. But each of the engagements and the designing of what the solutions are, you first have to understand what the issues are, as Miriam just described. But understanding what the issues are, we start with a conversation with the women in the community. So our model is that we partner with organizations who are working very closely with women who are networked, and whether they are a labor union or a that we're working with some other like microfinance institutions. We start there with the conversation, but the evidence base points to these solutions. And so we're reaching for scale and replicability, but the design has to come from the ground and the investment. And I think money is such an important topic in this. We understand all of this, but we have to have money to do it. And so the fact that the Save Us Sisters are co-financing at this scale is phenomenal. And so I think when we think about matching funds in a public-private construct, we need to think about matching the household spend, because household spend is the biggest contribution in adaptation finance in the capital stack. So thinking differently about where the money is coming from, but that also means reducing the risk, not just creating a financial product, starting with the impact that you want to have, then figure out what the instrument is. But that also means education, early warning systems, cooling centers, sustainable, reusable sanitary pads. We're learning that women are reporting in our groups, and we work in Thailand and Liberia and Sierra Leone, their period flow is heavier during extreme heat. And so while they're working, it's creating yet another problem. And so we can solve this with this. There's a business solution here, but it starts with a conversation with the women and the evidence base.
Rima, what's your perspective on public-private partnerships and the most effective way to get the funds you need to complete your work?
I would like to say at least three things. And one is that definitely let the women be at the center and then design the partnership around them. Poor alone cannot, bring out solutions which can then go to scale. And therefore, partnerships definitely are needed. Second, I would like to say that, yeah, we did partner with CRA, but CRA brought some private sector as well, like Swiss Re or the Prudential or the ICICI. But I think it's a matter of how do you learn the language of each other. As Kathy was saying, that you listen to the women, you talk to the women. So women have to be in the center. And the last and not the least is a partnership has to be contributory. So you always bring in matching, not that there is a sole contribution from the partner, whether it's a public sector or a private sector. So it's a people sector, private sector, and public sector. When all three comes together, it becomes a scalable and a replicable model.
Scalable and wow, I can't speak today. Scalable is an important word, but I want to make sure we talk about risks. We have like 3 minutes left, and Miriam, I'll start with you. What do you see as the biggest risk in your ability to complete your mission?
Because in our part of the world, it is very, very extremely risky. We have a huge number of Afghan refugees. We have very porous border with Afghanistan, and what happens. So that is, that risk. What happens at the regional level has direct impact at the community level, in the villages directly. So there are many kinds of this political um, and something happening at level, and then disasters, and then accessing women, then trust building. And unless you have a good reputation, no one will allow you. Reputation is also extremely important, that you are seen, that you are not alien, you are not some coming with a foreign agenda, so that you are grounded. There are so many factors and risk involved, and then steering in all these, it takes time. So we have been working since last 30 years. We are enjoying that kind of trust of the people, not only ordinary people, powerless people, but also of the other important stakeholder. And one has to be legally sound, uh, working with the legal framework, transparency, and values. I think it is very important that values of participation, what you say, that is being seen also, that effort being, as a whole, there are many risks involved, but then, as I said, women are resilient, and they learn from the beginning how to survive, how to not only survive, but how to make their community also learn, and then spread the word, because when something happens in the neighborhood, and so the woman looks at it, the next day she wants the same thing, whether it is whatever that is. So I think we are very hopeful, because women power cannot be undermined. It is there. It will always be there. It's only, as Dima said, women-centered policies have to be, brought forth, and then external agency, women agency has to be strengthened, and women agency nowadays is weakening, but more efforts like this is needed to strengthen women agency, because only that, when you have that backing, people will listen. The powerful people would.
And speaking of activating rooms like this, we just got the 1-minute warning. So 15 seconds each. We have executives, we have philanthropists, we have NGO leaders in this room. What is one thing each of the women in this room can do when they leave today? Rima, I'll start with you. Oh, sure. I'll give you the last word. Kathy, you're on the spot first.
Just a personal thanks to Zainab for just turning up the temperature in here so that everyone roasts just a little bit to feel our issue. That was really special. Yeah, thank you. What can everyone do? See heat for what it is and understand for yourself your own heat risks. Women are 50% more likely to die in Europe from heat than men. Who's in your life who's really vulnerable to extreme heat? Yeah. And I'm not taking more than 15 seconds. And also, how can I not say this? Look at climateresilience.org. Look at our website and learn more and get involved.
Miriam? One thing you want the women in this room to do, if they have checks they can write, if they're
I was because something else. One thing.
in 15 seconds.
There are so many things we did.
Quick.
Okay, so I think when focus programming, that women are at, and
Stability.
gender center, it is not happening.
Thank you so much. And I think climate and capacity are the big challenges. And I would request one and all to come and meet with the members of SEVA and see how they give you the hope and courage to fight with it. So I would like to say that it's women, work, and peace. And I think that will bring the solutions to climate and to the world at large. And one more message from my 3.2 million sisters. I will sing it in our language, but I'm sure you all would follow. My sisters can join me as well. અમે પાર કરીશું, અમે પાર કરીશું, અમે પાર કરીશું એક દિન. ઓહો ઊંડા અંતરમાં અમને છે વિશ્વાસ, અમે પાર કરીશું એક દિન. We shall overcome. We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday. Oh, deep in our hearts, we do believe we shall overcome someday. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Rain, Marion, and Kathy.
Closer?
Right. There's so much enthusiasm in this room. I couldn't imagine a higher energy room at Climate Week New York and UN General Assembly. Can you all hear me? No? Okay. I think we're trying to get the audio fixed. Is this better? Can you comfortably hear? Okay, good. Well, welcome to our next panel. I know everyone is very enthusiastic following that first conversation. So I kindly ask for your attention so that we can move on to our next session. And I think the last panel really ended on such a beautiful note. When we're really thinking about the solutions, we're thinking about the ways that women can come together, can find their power, agency collectively to not just recognize the unique vulnerability that we hold when it comes to the climate crisis, but also find our power as solutionists and leaders. And leadership, I think that is the most important theme here, and courage. Courage is a word that I've been using repeatedly this week. We are in unprecedented times with rollbacks, with attacks. Courage is what's going to help us, what's going to lead us forward, finding it at the interpersonal level, but at the collective level. So I am so honored to be moderating this conversation with three panelists that represent those very values, leadership and courage. And what we'll be talking about is women's unique role in driving transformative climate solutions. We know that women represent 80% of climate refugees. I mean, just let that sink in. 80% of the climate refugees in the world are women. And so while women hold that vulnerability and are the most sensitive to climate impacts, they also therefore hold the keys to the solutions because they manage resources, they manage the well-being of their families. And so I'd like to start by kicking off with a question related to really how we think about the top-down and bottom-up role of women, and how, in addition to what we see at the macro level, we can really, from the bottom up, grow women-led solutions. And so I'll introduce our panelists, and then I'll ask Farhana to really kick off our discussion here. So Fariza Farhan, who is the chairperson and co-founder of Yayasan Haka, will be our first panelist. Our second panelist is Aisha Siddiqa, who is the founder and executive director of the Future Generations Tribunal and a Time Woman of the Year, and Alexia Leclerc, who is the co-founder and executive director of Staff Empowerment. So Fariza, can you start by just telling us a little bit about how you think, as a complement to some of the more top-down political solutions, women can be the solutionists and the drivers of transformative solutions bottom up?
Certainly. First of all, I feel like I need to introduce the work that I do. I work in this landscape called the Loiser ecosystem. is located in the northernmost corner of Sumatra in Indonesia. This landscape is 2.7 million hectares of largely intact forests, the last place on earth where the critically endangered Sumatran tiger, rhino, elephant, and orangutan still roam together in the world. It is also located in a province that is extremely patriarchal and conservative. Aceh is the only province in Indonesia that implements Sharia law. When we think about places like this, we would imagine that the role of women in society, the role of women in the protection of forests would be largely diminished. But in reality, women are such powerful forces. Aceh is the place where women are known to be the heroine in the fight for independence. Aceh is also the home where the first female admiral leading troops of thousands into the sea to fight against the colonial power. And today, women are the primary driving force for the protection of forests because they have the wisdom, they have the courage, but also they have a very persuasive approach in facing illegal activities. So they say that back then, when the men, their husband, go out on patrol and come across illegal loggers and um, other illegal activities, they come into fight immediately. Things escalated very quickly. But women, with their very persuasive approach, they de-escalate. They ask the illegal loggers about their life. Have you eaten? A simple question. Have you had coffee? Who is your mother? From which family do you come from? It instantly brings the connection, human to human, instead of protector and perpetrator. And that human connection allow perspective and mind to shift, allow illegal loggers to see their roles, not only as people that need to bring money to the family, but also playing their role in protecting the forest. They would then be open to restoring the forest with this woman. So yeah.
What a beautiful example of a bottom up solution. So, really tapping into emotional intelligence. And rather than it being an us versus them, actually trying to listen and understand where another person is coming from and knowing that they're not bad necessarily, right? They're also probably trying to feed their families.
Yeah, precisely. Bottom emotional solution, but also strengthening the social fabric. Instead of creating an individualist community, they bring together that we all part of the same society.
Beautiful. Aisha, what does it look like in your community and your lived experience?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I really want to add to what Farouiza said because we're both planetary guardians. And just a couple of weeks ago, we were in the Aceh rainforest, and I got to meet some of the women that Farouiza is talking about. And they aren't just like strong metaphorically; they are strong in every sense of the way. They have lost so much, but they were the ones giving me courage. But in my community, I'm also from Pakistan. I'm from central North Pakistan, and I come from an indigenous community. And a couple of years ago, around 50 years ago, my family was disenfranchised of our land. We were pushed into the city center. And this happens often. We are a landlord system, and oftentimes, if the land is more valuable to outside forces, they will convince you to sell it. And if you can't sell it, they will convince you under force and coercion. And so my family lost all of our land, and it became not sharecropping, sugarcane. And my family moved to the city. The disenfranchisement in our community is so visceral because we went from having access to food, access to cattle, access to milk, access to eggs to being poor. And poverty hit us like a ton of bricks. And that poverty, the only person who ended up maintaining the family's finances was my grandmother. My grandmother is the reason I am here today. And this is so true for so many communities in indigenous areas around the world. But more than that, they are the ones that are holding our family system together. They're the ones who are washing the bodies before they're burying them. They're the ones who are delivering the babies in flood zones. They're the ones, especially in Pakistan, given the floods that happened in 2023 and the most recent floods, women and doctors are the ones going in. And not only doctors, I mean, just social care workers, And just people who have even bare minimum medical experience are the ones giving drips and helping people get out. And I guess resilience is bottom up because at the same time, during floods, and I think Auntie Miriam, you were talking about this too, there's so much violence that happens against women, specifically in our region. And I'm speaking on behalf of Pakistan today, but to Auntie Miriam's point, we are close to the border of Afghanistan. What's happening in Afghanistan with the climate crisis is also horrific. There's earthquakes happening, there's floods happening, there's drought happening. Nobody talks about it because Afghanistan is not represented in places like this. But at the same time, when these events happen, women are the ones protecting each other because the rate of sexual violence is so gosh darn high. During the 2023 floods in Pakistan, rape and sexual violence against women increased threefold. And women who were trying, like little girls who were trying to get from one place to another, were abducted. And the safe zones that were created were by other women, other young women. I personally know the young women who got on motorbikes with their cousins, with their uncles, went to the flood zones and got people out and put them in shelter. That's how bottom up it is. And it is, the climate crisis is not just like metaphorically again affecting women in the job market. It is literally causing the death of women in mass, and it is causing violence against women in mass because people get away with it. That's how simple it is. So I guess the bottom up approach in my lived experiences, if I didn't have the matriarchs in my life who protected my family when we were disenfranchised, when we were, pardon my bluntness, dirt poor, I wouldn't be here today. And they are the only reason I'm able to speak with as much vigor as I can, because they lived through it and they lived through it silently. But everything that you sequester comes out eventually, and I guess I'm that.
Yeah, I think so. Thank you for sharing, and thank you for being so vulnerable and in sharing your experience. I mean, that safety that women can provide, that community aspect, I think is what I take away from what you're saying, is that women supporting women is what that bottom up solution look like in your community. Thank you. Alexia, tell us about where you're from and what your lived experience tells us about ways that women can rise up.
Yeah, so I come here from Texas, and as many of y'all may know, we produce 2 billion tons of crude oil every year. If Texas was a country, that'd be more than every country in the world except for 2. So it is the epicenter of like causing the climate crisis, but then there's also so many frontline communities where you knock door to door and everyone has cancer because of the petrochemical industry. But I think building off of what my peers have said, we're also seeing that the real change is coming from the grassroots, and it is being led by women, because women are the knowledge keepers and the cultural keepers of the community and have the wisdom to live sustainably. And I think with my organization, Start Empowerment, what we really are trying to do is create that space for women to be able to pass down that intergenerational knowledge. And we're investing in the leadership of young Black and Brown women. And just one example, we have a summer fellowship where we've had over 70 plus young Black and Brown women that we've paid to learn and organize. And part of it looks like just learning about the native plants and foraging them, being in the water, reconnecting with it, reclaiming our cultures that has been lost through colonization. And as a result of it, they're also leading grassroots campaigns. And most recently, we actually had a big win in Corpus where we fought a $1.2 billion desalination plant and won. And that prevented over an additional 300 billion tons of CO2 emissions. And that is literally a direct result from investing in young Black and Brown women and making sure that we have these spaces to get to know each other, to build together, to learn together, to build community. I think especially with the rise of fascism in this country, a lot of people are talking about building community, but what does that actually look like? It has to center women.
Thank you. So I think it's beautiful how each of you represented a different type of bottom-up solution. There's the empathy, emotional intelligence. There's the solidarity and the community aspect, and then there's keepers of indigenous knowledge and tradition. And so my next question for the three of you would be, well, now that we've seen some of these bottom-up solutions, how do we scale them when there might be structural, political, or financial, or cultural barriers to scale these solutions? What are some, entry points that you see for us to be able to systematically be able to embed these solutions into our action set? Fariza.
Okay, I know we're at limited time. I'll go for it. So I think the answer is super simple. I don't think it's complicated. I think you literally have to go to the ground and ask people. I think the more we sit in boardrooms and the more we postulate and the more we hypothesize in our own places in the north, it's not working. And the reason I say this is because I'm working on going to where the issue is and asking people through a project called the Future Generations Tribunal. My particular focus on planet Earth, my life focus, is to make sure that as the climate crisis gets worse, the people who are most vulnerable aren't left out. And I think to Alexia's point of fascism, I think we're at a resource scarcity era of our time period. And the way we get to bottom up is you knock on doors and you ask them, what is happening? What is bothering you? What are you losing? And that takes time. That takes staying in the community for weeks at an end. That takes introducing yourself and going every week. And it can't be done in this fast-paced way that we think it can be done. And for that reason, we need to facilitate, if we're going to be protecting the future, if we're going to be protecting young women, we need to ask them, what do you need? And I don't think we're doing it enough. I think we think we're doing it enough. I think we have surveys by the UN and we have surveys from the World Bank and so on and so forth. But genuinely, as there's so many of you in leadership positions, have you gone to the communities that you work about? Have you knocked on doors? Have you sat with the elders? Have you shared tea? Have you lived in the accommodations that they live in? Have you lived in the area where the climate crisis is reaping havoc? If you haven't, go. It'll change your entire approach. And that's how you can scale it up, because the things that matter will be so bluntly obvious that we get stuck in meetings and agendas and boardrooms and fundraising. I mean, all of that will be easier once you know what's actually happening to the people on the ground. And by actually, I also mean communities that we think are too volatile. I think there's a perception that we don't want to go into the Middle East because it's too volatile. Well, heck, that's where the climate crisis is wreaking havoc. I think we don't want to go to war zones like the Congo because it's too volatile. Well, that's where the climate crisis is alive and well. So that's my answer.
Yeah, so it's also having the humility to know we don't have all the solutions, and actually the people on the ground are the ones that are the best guide for how we scale these solutions. Thank you. Alexia?
Yeah, I mean, I think you said it beautifully. We already have the solutions. Our people have lived sustainably for thousands of years with Mother Earth. We don't need to invent new things. We have the technology. It's in the plants, it's in the surrounding, it's in the stories. And so, how can we meet people there? And how can we pour the money, the resources without strings attached to those frontline communities? Because they truly do know what they need.
Thank you. Fariza, how do you see it?
The only way we could scale up the solutions is to connect, to invest, and to amplify. Because women on the grassroots have the answer. They have always been. As Alexia said, invest with no string attached. Because when nature gives us services, it comes with no strings attached. And somehow, all these years, we always think about return on investment. And when we think on that framework, the return on investment was hardly ever taking into consideration the restoration of nature. And I think for us to put our money where our mouth is and truly investing on those women in the grassroots in a way that works for them, take their wisdom as guidance instead of our own framework.
Yeah, wonderful. So it's I think a combination of going back to simplicity, but also then putting funding behind those solutions. So recognizing we're here in a very a lot of decisions are being made this week. A lot of so-called leaders are gathering. If you could implement, and this would be a rapid fire because I think we're coming to the end of our time. If you could implement one policy or program or one ask for people in the room or piece of advice, what would it be? Whoever's inspired to go first.
I kind of have a little question, which is what are we willing to sacrifice for humanity? And I think for me, I think about the sacrifices that my mother has made and that so many mothers have made for their children. And I hope that we can embody that approach when we're thinking about what are we willing to give to solve the climate crisis.
So you're asking us to go inward, right? So rather than demanding something of the world, go inward. All right, that's beautiful. Thank you.
I think the way we protect the planet is we protect women, because the same way we're abusing, using, misusing, hurting, taking from the planet, we do to women. What we do to women as a society, we do to the planet. That's why we call her Mother Earth. We just take her for granted again and again and again. And so in this country, we need to protect women. Across the world, we need to protect women. And we need to protect women's decisions to make choices for themselves. And I say this as an Indigenous woman. I say this as a young woman. I say this as a brown woman sitting in front of you today. We are more at risk than we have been in the last couple of decades with the rise of fascism and male-centered approach, which also capitalism stems from. And so I think like we all need to get together and start standing up for our sisters in ways that we haven't been before, because we need it more now. The violence against women is increasing, and it's increasing like tepid water, slowly, 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 until it's just going to be too much.
Thank you. Faruiza, last word to you.
Thank you. For me, it's really a shift in our perspective to see one another, highlighting what Aisha and Alexia have said. We need a world where compassion and empathy are the primary baseline to see one another, how we connect with one another. Our compassion for each other really would determine how our compassion with the world and people that may seem different from us. We have the tendency to only want to protect those that look like us, and it creates more division, more fascism, more nationalism. But I realized that somehow, as the world moved to be more progressive, at a certain point, we also move backwards to be more regressive. And we're really missing that. We're really missing that love that we can share with one another and the planet. I think that's how we could restore society and community and this planet.
Well, thank you, all of you, for your leadership, for your courage, for being vulnerable and sharing these beautiful ideas with us. Thank you so much.
Okay, everyone. So we're going to have a poetry interval here. I'm going to take the executive position because we are here for an amazing poet, Emi Muhammad, who has many, many awards, but I'm not going to name all the awards. Emi, take it over.
Hi, everyone. I am so excited to be here. And I'm just gonna start. I'm not gonna bore you with the poetry. I loved everything that was said, especially what Aisha said. I'm from Darfur, from Sudan. So I'm going to share the first poem today. It is called Di Baladna, which means this is our home. If you are reading this, I forgive you. You have grown far from the heart of me, my child. Have lost the familiar love we held for one another in your first years of life. When you were young, you would marvel at the plants and critters that ran across my bosom. You worshiped the water, swam up and down my rivers, drank for my rain, begged for sun on the snowy days, and laughed at each first snow. You didn't hesitate to sink your fingers into the mud of me and tickle loose little pebbles, seedlings, droplets, and worms. How you came to me, making a refuge for every wayward wanderer, lining the kitchen shelves and jars of lightning bugs and butterflies. You rested your head at my tender hearth, your weary body in my pockets. You loved me. You nurtured me before you knew what it was to nurture, tended me before you knew what it was to tend. Tiller, sower, farmer, green-thumbed little one, you loved me. Lately, you hurt me. You break and cut and tear into me, and I forgive you. For I am a part of you like your brothers and sisters before you and those who are close to me now, so I forgive you. I forgive you again for the reaping you do with no intention to sow, again for the waste and greed and gluttony when you were young. You asked me why they do this. Once brothers and sisters, now staining the earth with the blood of your people, tearing apart the branches of your family tree. You losing ground and hope all in one fell swoop. You came to me, begging me to make sense of it all, resting under the shade of date palms and magnolias. All I could offer you then was a promise that wherever you would go, you would find me. Lately, there isn't much left for me to promise. They've dug pits into my thighs, have stolen the ruby, gold, and emeralds, my place in my thighs. I do all I can to heal, but my weary body won't clear away the hurt so easily. I cough and spew and gush and bruise, and it will not heal. My waters rush but do not soothe. The air in my lungs suffocates the little ones when a child of mine dies by my hands. Here in the long forgotten valley of your youth, visitors come not of their own accords, but by necessity. Abdelghani and Izdihara sink their fingers into the mud of me, saplings cling, and I am whole again. Luca and Layatu line their homes in fruit born of me, and I am whole again. Fatim builds monuments to my skies, channels the lightning, captures the sun, and I am whole again. Usman protests. It isn't mine alone to mend, he says. I need you to build and make new, to start again, to bring forth life from relentless earth, building an oasis of only charred terrain, making a refuge of nothing but lightning strikes. Let me be more to you than just a final resting place. Let me do more for you than call you home. Child of mine, if you are reading this, I need you. Your mother. If this land could speak, would she thank us, praise us? Would she ridicule us or beg us? Would her voice be gentle, weary, disdainful? Would it shake with sorrow, with rage? I used to wonder at these things all of the time. When I was 11 years old, I watched my neighbor's house crumble before my eyes. To see her wade through her home like that, to watch her try to salvage all that she had left. Our country was already torn apart by war, and now the earth began to purge us too. If you could stop the next tornado from hitting your home, the next hurricane from wiping out your city, the next drought from starving your people, the next lightning strike from ending your life, wouldn't you? Locusts in the Horn of Africa, the floods in South Sudan, the threat of rain that won't stop or rest that won't come, fires in California, Australia, the ice in Chicago. We are at the precipice of possible change. Turning point that can and will define us. Fire or ice, how will the world end? I don't know, and I don't want to find out. Not in this generation, and not in the next. Thank you, everyone.
Nabi Muhammad. Wow. Wow.
Thank you. May I ask Sylvia Errol to join me? Thank you. Wow, what an amazing poetess. This is what the youth is. As to quote our hostess, Diane Van Westerberg, these are some badass women here, you know. Everyone, I have the extreme privilege to introduce you all to Dr. Sylvia Errol, known as the Queen of Oceans, also known affectionately as her deepness, a pioneering oceanographer, marine biologist, and explorer, but also a guardian for our planet's watery hearts. She just celebrated, if I may, 90th birthday last month. Woo! With more than 100 expeditions, over 7,000 hours underwater, right? And pioneered, let me just read it here, chief scientist of the National Ocean and Atmospheric Administration and leader of the first and all female aquanaut team, basically. Wow. And this is just the highlight. Please, like there are documentaries about Dr. Sylvia Errol. There's so much more. And I'm such honored and privileged to be in your company. Thank you so much for joining us today. I want to start with a quote that you recently said to Nat Geo, which is, "We have learned more in the last 50 years than we had in all preceding human history. And yet, the same half century has also brought the greatest losses the seas have ever known." Can you tell us more about that? What do you mean? What's going on with the seas?
Thank you for the privilege of being here with all of you. It is truly an honor. I hardly know what to say, but I can say that we in the 21st century are probably the luckiest people who have ever arrived on Earth because of what we now know that no one could know before. When I say we've learned more in the last 50 years or so about who we are, where did we come from, what is this place, this planet, this blue planet in the universe, things that no one could know before. We know that mostly we know that we're in trouble because of us, our actions, what we have lost at the same time that we learned, consuming nature to foster our prosperity. All creatures do. I mean, birds build nests out of material they take from the forest. In the ocean, well, all animals don't photosynthesize. They have to eat something or someone. When you think about what it has taken to make any one of us, what we have taken from nature to make whoever we are right now, we all have this great tale of consumption. The longer we live, the more we have taken. And in nature, there is no such thing as waste. There is no such thing as excess. But we have invented those concepts. We have taken more than any other single species. We've done it quickly. Geologically speaking, Earth is more or less 4.5 billion years in the making. Here we are, the beneficiaries of all that has gone before. When I dive into the ocean, and if you haven't taken the plunge, if you think that it's past your time to do this, my mother was 81 when she first put on a face mask and put on fins and took the plunge. When she came back, she said, "Why didn't you get me into the ocean sooner?" I wish I had. I tried. But if you're 81, it's not too late. And anyone at any time, the ocean is there, our life support system. Go see what's going on beneath the surface. Even if you've never seen or touched the ocean touches you or touches everyone and everything. For humans, every breath we take, every drop of water we drink, basically it comes from the ocean. It's where 97% of Earth's ocean, Earth's water out there. Average depth is about where the Titanic rests. The maximum depth, 11 kilometers, 7 miles down. And it's filled with life, not just water. It's the living ocean that makes Earth habitable. And here we are, early in the 21st century, just beginning to explore the ocean, the technology that enables us to communicate around the world in ways no one could do when I was a child, not the instant means of speaking, sending images, communicating, learning. Makes us the best, gives us the best chance we will ever have. Understand how we can make peace with nature, peace with the ocean, peace with ourselves. I could go on, but
Well, let me ask you, because recently BBC was talking about a report about how heat is impacting the bottom of the ocean. There were some. Can you tell us more about that? What is happening at the bottom of the ocean and how it's being impacted in ways that we're not understanding?
you want to change the nature, change the temperature, change the chemistry, and you change everything. Either one will do it. We're doing both. One species out of all the creatures who live on Earth live in the sea. We are the ones who are driving planetary change in temperature, change in chemistry. The ocean is becoming more acidic, which means the creatures there have to live day and night in a changed world where we have changed the planet generally. This is not the planet I knew as a child. My species, we are the big change makers. In some ways, the changes we have brought about are great because of what we now know. We've been to the moon, been to the deepest parts of the ocean. We've been to the forests that were not accessible until fairly recent times. Certainly the ocean. I mean, it's only since 1960 that the first expedition taking 2 people to the deepest part of the ocean and coming back. It's so easy to go down. It's coming back that matters. Then you can share the view. Now, at this point, think of how many people have been to the moon. A dozen. How many people have been to the deepest part of the sea? More than have been to the moon. That wasn't true 10 years ago. It's technology that is enabling us to do things that we could not do before, learn what we could not understand before, but also to destroy on a level that was incomprehensible until the 20th century. More whales were killed in the 21st century than during all of their existence or ours. Power of killing. We're the best creature ever. Think great white sharks, think lions and tigers, nothing compared to humans. We have perfected the fine art of killing, of destroying, of eliminating forests on a scale and speed, eliminating life in the ocean. Since I was a child, half of the wildlife that lived in the ocean when I was 10 years old, gone, converted into products, converted into the marketplace. Wildlife, fish or wildlife, whales, wildlife, krill, shrimp, oysters, squid, octopus. These are all wild animals, not products, but we treat them as marketable goods. We have to change that perception.
Your organization that you founded, Mission Blue, has this project called Hope Spots. Hope Spots. Can you tell us more about what are the Hope Spots?
I'm looking at one right now.
Right.
I'm looking at all of you.
Oh, exactly.
Reason for hope of what, not only what we know, but what we have the power to do with what we know. As mothers, everybody here, everybody on the earth, we've all had mothers. We have learned, our first teacher typically start with our mothers. We have a chance, we women, we parents, because fathers have something to do with it too. But we teach children. They're born not knowing who they are, where they've come from. They don't know language. They don't know math. They don't know what the stars are made of. No one knew until right about now. The level of knowing gives us the best chance we will ever have to shift from this trajectory of decline to recovery. And it really starts with sharing what we know, starting very young, when we're born. To teach not just facts and figures and language, music, art, all those things are really important, but it's the values. What do we care about? And how do we live in peace with one another? And how do we take this remarkable opportunity we have now that has never been possible before and convert it to the power of caring? We can do this, and it starts with mothers. On the first day a child is born, and every day that follows with your influence. And I was blessed with parents who did care about nature. And I just felt what I now still feel, uh, treating others with dignity and respect, no matter what anybody looks like, what they know. They know things I don't know, whoever you are. Everybody has something special. It makes you you. It's the power of knowing that and then using that, whatever it is, to get from wherever you are to a better place and bring others along in that direction. Protecting nature, protecting the ocean, protecting life, as if your life depends on it, because it does.
I have last two questions very quickly. One of the goal is to protect 30% of the oceans. How far are we in accomplishing that goal?
Well, I think today there will be a celebration
Huh?
about the ratification of the High Seas Treaty. 60 plus countries have not only signed this important treaty, but they've ratified it. They've double signed it, and they're committed, and more will follow. Just as with the law of the sea, when I was a child, there was no such thing. In fact, the idea of ownership, human jurisdiction in the ocean simply did not exist. We have created this way of taking responsibility for our action against nature, with nature. So there's an opportunity now to legally protect areas and places beyond national jurisdiction, beyond 200 miles from the shore. It is about half of the living world that is now within human authority to take action. Can't tell nature what to do. We can tell ourselves what to do or not in this vast blue space. From the surface to the greatest depths, this is where most of life on Earth is. We occupy the 3% of the planet where fresh water exists. We live mostly on the land. It's where 3% of the biosphere is. The ocean is where the action truly is, and we need to respect that and take care of that system makes our existence possible. So, presently, about 15% of the land has pretty good protection with national parks, wildlife refuges, policies that are directed to protecting birds and furry creatures in freshwaters. There is some protection for about 8% of the ocean. Actually, less than 3% of the ocean is highly or fully protected, where we have agreed not to kill things. It's considered a big deal in some countries to say we're not going to trawl in a protected area. So what kind of protection area is there if you deploy big nets to scrape the ocean floor and catch the wild creatures who live there? They call it protected, but it's not. Only really, say generously, 3% of the ocean, where we really agree to stop killing things, taking things. We've got a long way to go if in the next 5 years, by 2030, we can secure protection 10 times the amount that we now have for the ocean. We could do it with the high seas. That's half the world. Why are we deploying big fishing vessels? Only a few countries do this, taking wildlife not to take to eat, not because we need to, but because we can send them to a marketplace. Most of the sharks that were here when I was a child, gone. 90% of the sharks are gone. Just in my lifetime. Tunas were here, now they're here. All the creatures that we love to eat or use for whatever purpose, their numbers are at a historic low level. But we can change that. We are changing. There are more whales now than when I was a child because we stopped killing them. Yes. I mean, why not? Why can't we do that with some of the other creatures? We just, without thinking about them as wild creatures vulnerable to our actions, we can do our part for the individual actions we take. There are and will be more laws. We don't have to wait for the laws because we have power of choice. We have power of teaching and encouraging kids to listen to moms more than they listen to anybody else.
And on that note, thank you so, so much. Please check out Mission Blue. Thank you. Check out Mission Blue, Hope Spots, and be part of protecting the oceans. Please stay. There's more panels coming up. Very excited. Yes, next panel. Fashion. We're now talking about fashion. It's the fashion panel. Okay, great. Come on in. Please stay. Keep your seats, please. We are transitioning into fashion. And who doesn't like fashion in this room? We are in a fashion house, after all. So moderator, you're the one. Thank you. Do you need anything from me to quiet or this? Yeah.
Afternoon, everyone. Wow, this has been so inspiring, just listening to the last conversation. And I'm thrilled to be spending the next, I think, only 20 minutes with you and these three phenomenal women. My name is Sarah Kozlowski. I'm the Vice President of Program Strategies, Education and Sustainability Initiatives at the Council of Fashion Designers of America. And we'll be talking about production to consumption, women's sustainability and fashion together today. And really, really, really thrilled to have with us Dr. Amanda Parks, who's the CTO of Mothership Materials, Samina Verk from Vestera Collective, the Chief Marketing Officer, and founder and CEO of Another Tomorrow, Vanessa Barboni Halik. So to kick things off, because we have only a short amount of time, I'd love to jump in with each of you, beginning with you, Amanda, to introduce your work, yourself, at the intersection of fashion and sustainability.
I think we're sharing these. Hello, this is a surreal honor to follow Dr. Sylvia Earle, first of all, because I'm a scientist. I'm like, whoa, what just happened? And she just queued up like all the things I was going to say. So I work at this intersection of science and sustainability in fashion and textiles and materials, and have for 25 years in various ways. And I come from the world of the tech bros. And I guess it's no surprise that it's a woman who can be what I call like the innovation diplomat of our space. So there are ways which we can use technology and science to better nature. And that's what I'm all about at Philosophy of High-Tech Naturalism. I most recently was the founding scientist and chief innovation officer of a brand called Pangaia, where we were known for bringing new groundbreaking technologies that were materials that were very much in line with rebalancing with nature and getting them to market in commercially viable fast. And I'm working on solving those problems up the supply chain. All the things I couldn't get done at Pangaia, I'm doing with Mothership Materials, an amazing startup that founded by two women, incredible scientists, a female scientist coming from med tech, and doing targeted molecular recovery to create ingredient streams for all different kinds of materials, textiles. We can pull out a lot of different things. So that's where I'm at right now, moving upstream in the supply chain, a very important place to be.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having us and covering fashion, because I think we all agree that fashion is one of the industries we need to make sure we continue to focus on, especially as we hit this sort of topic of environmental impact. So I'm currently a global CMO and US CEO of Vestera Collective. For those of you who may not be familiar, we are a global resale platform for secondhand luxury and designer fashion. So our platform really connects a global community of buyers and sellers. We were one of the first resale players to be B Corp. And the reason that our founders had gone to become a B Corp is because we really wanted to sort of put a stake in the ground a few years ago and say that secondhand fashion, yes, it's about vintage and sort of the love of fashion, but it's also focusing on the end of the fashion life cycle and making sure that items can be circular, and it's part of the sort of momentum of how much do we really need to produce in order to stay fashionable. Me personally, I started my career in e-commerce, so tech bros I'm very familiar with. And then I transitioned into fashion because it was something I was personally interested in. Just from my childhood, I was first generation Pakistani American, learned how to sew when I was young. So I always had this sort of desire. And so I merged the two worlds at a time when resale was starting to be part of the conversation. But I think, what really happened in my career is I said, okay, I've honed in these skills in e-commerce and business. How can I bring that in a way that can really make impact? And so I think we're going to cover some topics later, which I think that could be relevant for.
Wonderful to be here. Vanessa Barboni Halik. I'm the founder and CEO of Another Tomorrow, which is a sustainable luxury brand really focused on regenerative sourcing and circularity. So like all of us apparently today, and Samina and I know each other very well, career changer. So I actually originally am an Iowa gal, grew up in a very hippie, techie, progressive family, spent a long career in finance, running emerging markets, businesses, and really saw the deep power of capital. What gets funded is what gets built out there. And that's equally true for what the consumer buys. But I took a sabbatical thinking I was going to stay in the fashion or in the finance space rather. And I was just blown away by how massively impactful this industry is. I mean, the industry as a whole uses about 4 times the Earth's planetary boundaries, and it throws half of the product it makes directly into a landfill. So all of the work that we're doing up here is deeply meaningful. I took a look at fashion through the lens of industry transformation, systems change, and really thought that we needed to develop a new blueprint. And brands are, in fact, a mirror image of the industry. And so really built Another Tomorrow to be that blueprint and take a very open source approach to what we've developed, hoping to start to scale some of these solutions elsewhere as well.
It's amazing. And to Grant said, as many of you know, the fashion industry globally is economically very powerful, over 1 trillion annual revenue. And unfortunately, we are responsible, numbers vary, but anywhere between 8 to 10% of carbon impact due to the fashion sector. At the same time, 80% or more of consumer base in the fashion sector globally are women, but only about 14% hold leadership roles. So have here 3 phenomenal leaders who come to the fashion sector bringing with them expertise in technology and science and finance, business, retail and luxury, and converging to really, as you said, Vanessa, chart new blueprints for circular business models. But what does that really mean? And what is the role of women, knowing that we have such a high consumer base ratio disproportionate to leadership roles? So to kick that off, I'd just love to hear from each of you. Knowing that we are in the sector both known for innovation, creativity, circularity, when we keep our heads and hearts together, look into the future, but we're also a polluter. How do you see women's leadership and the role of that shifting this paradox into an opportunity for positive change in fashion?
Happy to take it. I mean, we look at it first and foremost through the lens of fair pay. So over 90% of garment workers do not earn a living wage. And that's something that's completely invisible to the consumer. And so, you know, our commitment to transparency, our commitment to policy change that really starts to shift that landscape, I think is absolutely critical. It's amazing to me how little I knew coming into this and how little the average consumer knows. So critically important, and culture really matters at a time when policy is stalled. So I think first and foremost, we have to start there.
And I think that just coming from the world of tech and innovation, I've been in many, many rooms where I was the only woman. And I think that it's the old adage of you're never going to fit in, so you might as well stand out. So, and also become like a terrible note taker. Luckily, we have AI to do that for us now, because then if you're terrible at it, they won't ask you to do it because you need to be in charge of the room and leading the discussion. So I think that from that point of view, the leadership really comes from this idea of the kind of courage to just go after your own convictions, and in the sense of challenging things that didn't make sense. You know, we're coming from looking at fashion business models, and I was coming from a different industry and saying, why is that happening? It's like, just because it is. Well, there's no reason that that's exactly why it has to be. And it's the same thing with all different kinds of tech and investment. I now serve as a global scientific advisor for Regeneration VC. So looking at, and I really want to get into this sector because the models we heard earlier are very, very broken about who is getting the money and why. And quite frankly, that's where the power lies. So I think that it's be in those rooms where you're uncomfortable and you stand out and to kind of embrace it.
I'd say ditto to both of those. I think for where we're at Vestiaire, there's sort of 2 sides of it. One is our internal team and how we sort of rally behind our employees, and then the brand itself. So the company was actually founded in Paris 16 years ago now by 2 amazing female French, very chic founders. And so as the company has grown and expanded into the US, they've continued to stay very involved. And so I've been very fortunate to kind of join this company where, you know, there's sort of this equal energy of e-commerce and fashion, and the 2 are very healthy tension. And I think that's actually helped build a brand to what it is today. And so as we've expanded into the US and hired a team here and started to bring that team in, you know, we've brought that into the environment. It's still a priority. Our board is 50-50. But I would say it is still, even in our industry, a topic, and even in our company is a topic, because again, that healthy tension of e-commerce and fashion brings out, you know, what are different viewpoints. And I think everything that you just said about, you know, being in the room and making sure your voice is heard is important. I think one thing that we're really trying to do as leaders is just mentor our employees, but also external moments. Like we were talking earlier about coming to this panel. Why are we here? Also, just so that we can spread the word and make sure that our voices are heard. And so I think there's many ways to do it, and we've tried to kind of build that as our company has grown.
Amanda, there's so much excitement around material innovation. I think we agree next gen, the road forward, and there's some hard data that really evidences the interventions that can be successful from waste and to, really putting circularity in action. Can you tell us a little bit about what excites you right now, or like what's in your viewfinder that's coming through the pipeline with material innovation?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting time because I was just at a leadership roundtable yesterday about why isn't there any next gen materials coming? And so there's a simultaneously thinking that there's a failure and a success. And I think that the point being that these things take time. This is a scientific and technical industry, and so we have to, as fashion people, be very patient. The stuff is coming. We have to get the money to the right places for the scale up. I think I'm very excited about how we sort of think about new bio-based materials in the context of using technology to develop them. So what is now called the category of man-made cellulosics, trying to change that to human-made cellulosic fibers. But this idea where we can have all of the sort of functionality of what we think about synthetics, we just have to get rid of polyester and nylon, but doing it through a bio-based material. And I think that this whole other notion that I'm working on with Mothership is to pull out the cellulose. So the best fabric that we developed at Pangaea was something called fruit fiber, which was made from the waste of pineapple, banana, and seaweed entirely. So we wanted to show beautiful drapey kind of fabric that had no actual cotton in it. And everything, no matter how great we made the fabric and blending, et cetera, we could never get it down to cost parity with even organic cotton because of the cost of the waste processing up at the top stream. And we also just heard from Dr. Earle that there is no waste in nature. So what was left over from this plant? So we're really committed to bringing those cost measurements down, not because we're trying to track fast fashion prices. We are trying to get it down to sort of an equal, addressable kind of cost parity for what we call waste. So get rid of the couture waste problem.
Incredible. I'm going to jump to you, Vanessa, because I know as founder and CEO, you through and through have a vision that brings together transparency, ethical fashion, and true responsibility in action. How do you navigate, as a CEO, there's so much, and I know that also education and activism is a really important part of your culture, both internally and externally.
I got a lot of grief at the beginning. It was like, how on earth are you going to do all the things? But I think when you look at it as a systems problem, you have to, because so many points of failure are basically taking point solutions and trying to apply them to a linear model that generates a lot of risk, a lot of waste, a lot of race to the bottom. So we really look at it as a holistic whole. So in an ideal world, policy would create parity across a large landscape. We know that we're a little bit logjam there. But for us, we've deeply kind of narrowed in on, we do all the things that we've always done, but really deeply narrowed in on regenerative sourcing, especially now that we have data that back up that we have materials that we've developed that actually net sequester carbon, which is huge, and equally around circularity. We wear 20% of what's in our closets. It's kind of shocking. That's a global statistic. So getting that product from, I look at it as like farm to closet to closet to closet. Like that's kind of our jam. But you got to do it all.
Beautiful. And Samina, with the Stare Collective, you are really reconfiguring the retail landscape and have a powerful, I think, approach to intervention around fast fashion. Can you share with us a little bit about how you go about the whole platform of resale and, working against fast fashion?
Well, I think part of it is, I mentioned before, we're a community of buyers and sellers. So a lot of the brand, when it was originally developed, was sort of developed on 4 brand pillars. So one was fashion curation. And on that note, it's closet to closet. There's a lot of amazing fashion, really beautiful product that has been well designed, well made, and built to last. When one person is done with it, there is somebody else that can enjoy it. So that was always a part of the ethos. Trust. And it does matter because I think when you're dealing with secondhand, having the trust factor of both curation but also authentication is important. And then community, which is our platform. We don't exist if there aren't buyers and sellers. And then sustainability. And, I mentioned we're B Corp, but really the mission from the beginning is how do we make the fashion industry a more sustainable future by embracing and empowering our community to make that change. And so it genuinely has been part of the ethos from the beginning, but from the beginning, it was more about bringing style and connecting our community. And by the way, this is a smarter way to shop. And I think that that sort of kicked off how we approached it. So as we've grown, we've continued to have these moments on educating about our platform, about buying and selling, but we also include a lot of impact marketing moments. So, throughout the year, we'll have regular brand campaigns, partnerships, closet sales, and we always make sure to have 2 to 3 moments where we talk about impact, but again, not necessarily as the forefront and not shaming anybody, but more about, did you know? Because we find most people just don't have all the information. And when you think of the everyday customer, the everyday fashionista, all of us when we get dressed, we have so many things that we're balancing, it's not top of mind. So it's a little bit more about how do you bring the brand to life? How do you give education around communication and really let people know why they should choose secondhand? And so one of our campaigns was ban fast fashion. So we used AI to show what it would look like if all of the clothing waste that ends up in landfills ends up on your doorstep, or in New York and Paris and in London. And we showed how it looked in relation to Times Square and Buckingham Palace and the Eiffel Tower. And yet right after, the follow-up was like, how do you participate? So I think for us, it's how do you take all of those 4 pillars and create a moment that the customer can relate to?
Amazing. I am so astounded that we're already out of time. This is like a lightning talk. And as we wrap up then, I'd just love to hear from each of you quickly as a key takeaway for every woman in this room. What would your advice be on how they can change their relationship with fashion in a positive way? Essa.
Ask the question. I think it's really daunting how complex sustainability in fashion can be, but there's deep power in asking questions of brands. It shows that you care. If you have to ask one, was the person who made this paid a living wage? Like, you can have to just only pick one.
Thank you.
I mean, I would say in addition to that, just be intentional. I think we're in this world where there's throwaway fashion, there's throwaway trends, there's just so many things that are coming and going. We're on social media. It's like, you really take a moment and take a step back. Fashion should be how you reflect yourself. Your style should be truly authentic. And how can you participate in that, but be intentional with how you do it?
100% agree with both of those. And I think also travel with intention, understand different communities. We had amazing examples of, different women are up here. Bring up the women around you in your careers, et cetera. And this is just my personal pet peeves. Please stop buying vegan leather. It is plastic. It should be illegal to call it vegan and have nothing to be plant-based. There's a whole lot of complexity around plant-based leather, but just start there.
Oh, so well said. Please join me in thanking Samina, Vanessa, and Amanda. Thank you.
I'm Amanda, sorry. I'm Amanda. Oh, okay. Me too. I'm going to go straight into my Maori greeting. Is someone going to introduce? Or just they want me to just start? Yeah.
Aloha mai kako, everybody. My name is Amanda Ellis, and I have the honor of moderating one of my idols, a Time 100 climate leader, Zipporah Berman. But before that, Zipporah is founder of the Fossil-Free Non-Proliferation Treaty, which is amazing. So before I interview her, I would like to start with a formal greeting in Maori, which is the indigenous language from Aotearoa, New Zealand, my birth island. E ngā mana, e ngā reo, e ngā rangatiratanga, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. That greeting recognizes you all as the important leaders that you are. Leaders for the transformational change we need right now in the world. And you might have noticed that I repeated tēnā koutou, which is an inclusive saying for all of us, 3 times. Once for the ancestors who are always with us. Once for all of us in the room who are the change makers today. For the third group, the most important, future generations. So it's a great pleasure to be with you, and I am just so honored to be with this incredible group of women today. Kudos to Elise Nelson, CEO of Vital Voices. Thank you, Zainab, for your amazing work. Thank you to DVF for hosting us, and to Daughters for Earth for recognizing women as the champions for action that we are. Zipporah, wow. Zipporah was in prison for 2 weeks instead of 6 years for the work that she did in Canada to stop ancient trees being turned into pizza boxes and tissue paper. And now she is running the fossil fuel non-proliferation treaty, and it is something that I have followed for a number of years. You'll see I'm wearing the badge, which she gave me at breakfast at Davos this year when I heard her speak. So tell us about the genesis of this important treaty.
Sure, and thank you so much for having me here. This morning has been so incredible and so moving. I'm really honored, and I've learned an enormous amount. You know, what's really shocking is that for 29 years of climate negotiations, we've been negotiating emissions and how much countries are allowed to pollute, while simultaneously growing the production of fossil fuels with no regulation, no international agreements around how much we pollute, how much we grow. So yesterday a report came out by the Production Gap Report, and it shows that we're on track to produce 120% more oil, gas, and coal by 2050 than we can ever burn if we want to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement. So this idea for me came from my work in the Alberta tar sands, where I was appointed by the Alberta government to design climate policy in the tar sands, which, as you can imagine, was fascinating. And it became clear to me, despite a lot of good people around that table and even consensus that we were able to reach with Indigenous nations, with impacted communities, with the oil industry even, that our governments were only willing to talk about reduction in emissions and technology to reduce emissions. And they felt and feel that they have a right to just keep producing. Everyone has a right to produce. And it was that moment when I realized, well, wait a minute, what climate policy around the world is actually constraining the production? How can we be saying we're only going to cut with 1/2 of the scissors, the demand and not the supply? So I started doing research around the world. I went to Norway, I went to the Amazon, I went all over the world and met with academics and policymakers. And I was told that there is no supply side climate policy. That's not a thing. And it absolutely didn't make sense to me. So I started working with a group of lawyers and diplomats from around the world to look at what does the Paris Agreement say about the production of fossil fuels and what can we do about it? Paris Agreement doesn't include the words oil, gas, coal, or fossil fuels. And that's not by mistake. That's because the fossil fuel industry made a decision to try and make their products invisible 30 years ago, and they've been successful in doing that. So honestly, when I realized it and started talking about how we needed to create domestic and international agreements to constrain the production in a way that is fair and equitable, where there are rules like debt and trade and tax agreements that will help countries stop expanding fossil fuels, where they're being pushed into it, even though renewables are cheaper, I was told as a woman that I didn't understand climate policy by a lot of people. I spent about 5 years being mansplained how markets work. I was told, look, demand is going to go down, renewables are going to get cheaper, and then the markets will constrain supply. We leave it up to the markets to constrain supply. That's not working. It's not working fast enough to keep us safe because the markets are distorted with $7 billion worth of fossil fuel subsidies.
Trillion.
$7 trillion worth of, thank you, with fossil fuel subsidies. And every country, every company thinks, yes, we're going to reduce fossil fuels, we're going to phase them out, but ours are okay. We want to be the last barrel sold. And So that's a bit of the genesis of where the fossil fuel treaty came from. But the other part of the story is when I was doing my research, I came across the Suva Declaration, created by nations in the South Pacific in 2014, the first ever declaration by some of the most vulnerable countries in the world to stop expanding the production of fossil fuels. And so based on being inspired by the Suva Declaration, which of course, let's remember, these same governments, Vanuatu and Tuvalu, they brought us recently the International Court of Justice opinion. They brought us the 1.5 goal, loss and damage. You know, these leaders who are at the most vulnerable nations have brought us our best ideas. And so we started building on that, and I convened a group of diplomats and lawyers around the world to start looking at what could a fossil fuel treaty look like, learning from nuclear nonproliferation, learning from chemical weapons ban, landmines, and how could we create a companion to the Paris Agreement that is a work plan on how countries actually cooperate to phase out fossil fuels. That was 5 years ago, but today we already have 17 countries, including Colombia, Pakistan, many of the South Pacific countries who are participating to develop this treaty. We have another 5 countries that I believe will join by Belém. And so the block of nations willing to stand up to the fossil fuel industry, to Trump's relentless drill baby drill, to stand up to bullies and stand for science. These nations are the ones that we need to support in designing a real and true equitable phase out of fossil fuels, because it's not just about a stable climate, as if that wasn't enough. Fossil fuels are the leading cause of premature death on the planet.
I saw 8
million people died last year from fossil fuel air pollution alone. Our children are gasping for air. They are choking. Our planet is burning up and flooding. And while climate change and climate policy is complicated, 86% of the emissions trapped in our atmosphere come from 3 things: oil, gas, and coal. And we will not solve this crisis until we stop producing the stuff that's killing us and start supporting a clean and safer energy economy that is also about redefining power in every sense of the word.
Such compelling arguments. Brilliant.
Absolutely brilliant. And I served as New Zealand's ambassador to the United Nations. And it wasn't until Glasgow that, in fact, there was even a mention of fossil fuels as being part of the problem of climate change. So
our first campaign was at Glasgow. That's where we launched the fossil fuel treaty. And our first campaign was billboards and a digital strategy that said, it's time to say the F words at COP.
Woo! Time to say the F words at COP. Okay, we're going to put that on social media. Absolutely terrific. We have only a few minutes left. So I want to ask you, what are your biggest obstacles now? How is it that we can all become advocates for this important work? 2 things.
I think the biggest obstacle is people not talking about it and not talking about fossil fuels. When I first started working on fossil fuels, I was at a climate change conference in Canada. And someone from the Prime Minister's office came to me and said, people are saying it's a bit rude that you keep talking about fossil fuels. Rude. It's a hard thing to talk about because the fossil fuel industry has spent billions of dollars to fearmonger about scarcity and affordability and price increases.
All of which are wrong.
Which is why we're seeing the flip-flops of even great leaders who stood up to the fossil fuel industry, like Gavin Newsom this week, signing a bill to permit thousands of new oil drilling wells in California. And the bill's called the Climate and Energy Affordability Act.
That is crazy.
The fact is that renewable energy is cheaper. That's not our barrier. But you know what? No one owns the sun. No one controls the wind. This is not just about a technological or a policy issue. This is an ideological issue. It's an existential issue for the people in the fossil fuel industry and their cronies and the politicians they buy, because they make $2.8 billion a day in pure profit every day for the last 50 years.
Wow.
So this is about dominance. It's about dominance over women and our bodies and impacted communities and indigenous people, the most impacted people who are closest to nature. This is about control of nature and continued control of how we power our lives. So talk about it. Talk about fossil fuels. Encourage your elected decision makers to stop building the bad stuff and stop building the good stuff, because we need to triple renewables. There is no question, but the atmosphere doesn't care how many solar panels we build. The atmosphere cares how many fossil fuel projects we don't build. And that's the hard stuff. That's going to be difficult for them. But yesterday, Colombia announced that it's going to host the first ever diplomatic conference on fossil fuel phase out ever in the history of the world. So
Brilliant.
This movement is growing. There are now 4,000 organizations, many led by women, health groups, faith groups, who have joined up at the Fossil Fuel Treaty. And in 120 countries are campaigning to build the political space and social license for their decision makers to do the hard stuff. So join us at the Fossil Fuel Treaty. Tell us how we can support you. Join the movement, because together we are so much more stronger than apart.
Brilliant.
Fantastic. So, ladies,
So everybody, the call to action is to join the movement, and let's shift power in every sense of the word. Thank you so much. Thank you for.
Okay. So we've come to our last panel. I'm Elise Nelson. I'm president and CEO of Vital Voices Global Partnership. We are so incredibly honored to join with Daughters for Earth and my wonderful friend Zainab, who's also a board member at Vital Voices, for these incredible discussions. I think, just to paraphrase some of what we've heard, there are certainly no lack of solutions to this crisis, and there are definitely no lack of solutionaries, women leaders who have the ideas. And I believe so much that is because women are on the front lines of this crisis. As we heard, women, are more likely to die from heat. Women are more affected, and thus they understand so much greater the solutions. They understand them and they're willing to bring them. But as Zainab said in the very beginning, money. Where is the money? And what we also know, in addition to the fact that we got very little money previously, in the last 9 months, we've also seen a shifting back of political will. But we got to focus on solutions, and we got to focus on shifting the dynamics of power. And I loved what Sephora said, because absolutely, us together is more powerful than all the money. I mean, we focus on money, and yeah, we need the money, but us collectively, the power of women, when that force is tapped, truly tapped, that is going to be the force that brings about the change. So I want to turn to my panelists here to explore these ideas, to talk about how they are moving solutions forward, how they've been able to gain money for their innovative solutions. And let me just introduce them real quickly, and then we'll get right into the discussion. So Jody Weiss is the operating partner at Chloe Capital. It is a women-founded, led VC firm that invests in women-led solutions for impact. Next to her is Habiba Ali. Habiba is a social entrepreneur that Vital Voices has worked with over many years. She is the CEO of Sasai Renewable Energies, a social enterprise that offers efficient, reliable, and sustainable products, including solar, but also water filters. And finally, I want to turn to Tatiana Estevich. is founder and CEO of Permalution. Permalution is an incredible social enterprise. She's a tech and climate entrepreneur tackling the global water crisis with some really bold innovation. So I want to turn first to you, Habiba, because I think that your story reflects so much of how women come into this space. You saw a problem in your community in Nigeria, particularly in rural communities in Nigeria, and you couldn't look away. It was a health crisis, it was a crisis of poverty, and it was also a climate crisis. Talk a little bit about your work, but how you began, and what do you see as some of the challenges, but also opportunities?
Thank you very much, Elise. Hi, everyone. So I started my work simply because when I was working in deforestation and desertification, coming from a climate change angle, and I was co-founder of a certain NGO doing work in renewables, trying to see how we could use the renewable energies to reduce deforestation. And through that, I was lucky to have been invited to an event, the Partnership for Clean Indoor Air. And there I got to find out that just for spending 2 hours in an indoor air polluted, space, and this happens like every day in everybody's home in Nigeria, at least, 90% of the people who live in rural communities who can open fires by the light of a kerosene lantern. And this meant for every 2 hours they were facing this, they were inhaling an equivalent of 1 pack of cigarette. And this really scared me, coming from a daughter. I'm a daughter of someone who owned a roadside restaurant. We call it Mama Put in Nigeria. And we cooked on open fires by the light of a kerosene lantern every day. And by the time she listed all of the health effects, it involved breathing problems, eye problems, and so many other ones. And my sister had died prior of a breathing problem. And all I could think of was, at this time, my mother was no longer cooking in this restaurant. We had luckily been liberated, but I still bought food on my way back from home, from work every day, from women who cooked on open fires by the light of a kerosene lantern, with the kerosene lantern blaring all the smoke into their face. And that really, really scared me. Would it have to take us losing families before we realized that there's a problem? And I thought, okay, at this point, I was doing work with Improved Cook Stoves under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change through that NGO. And I thought, what could we do when it came to lighting? And that's how I started with solar lanterns. And now we power communities. And how we do it is we support women to also own businesses that are powered by renewable energies. We do mini and mesh grids. We start them with climate smart village solutions, where we anchor the energy solution, the renewable energy, solar powered renewable energy solution, on a productive use of energy solution, which could be a milling machine, an irrigation pump, a cold store, but something that the woman owned and it's her business. And then that could actually be the reason why the whole community then had power. So if we're using the mesh model meant she was the hub and she had spokes around her, which were homes that she could then power with electricity. And every one of them was metered and we made money from that. And at the same time, if it was a mini grid, we had a hub where we had all of the productive use of, we have a hub where all of the productive use of energy solutions are being powered by the mini grid. And at first, that's the priority. And each of that hub is owned by at least 10 women from the community. So you're actively supporting women to reduce fossil fuel usage. One thing that I didn't hear that I want to add to all of the things that came out this morning is, for every 1 gallon of fossil fuel being used anywhere in the world, you were emitting 27 kilograms of CO2 into the atmosphere. Let that sink. Every gallon. And I know of milling machines in some of the villages that I work, because milling is a big deal, because we eat, our mainstay of food has to be milled. They're all grains, right? And every milling machine, which could be 5 in one community, used a minimum of 10 gallons per day. Every day. There's nothing like Saturdays or Sundays. So that means every day, every blessed day for 365 days, 366 days, 270 kilogram times 5 per community, multiply it. And this is us just working in 150 communities for now. So one thing that also you should know is the other option is women actually are the ones who have to do most of this milling. So while the fossil fuel is emitting its kilograms of CO2, the woman is the one facing it and inhaling it. So there's a huge crisis. We need to actually do something really fast. And one of the things that stops us from doing the work, especially as a woman-owned business now, is most of my limitation is to raise the kind of financing that I need to do this kind of work at the scale that needs to be done to reduce drastically and quickly the problem that we're facing. I don't want $1 million. I need $30 million and a minimum to at least do 100 communities starting with. But where do I find that kind of money? I've never heard of a woman who raised $30 million in the renewable energy industry. If you know one, please tell me. You know, and currently we're in the market for 19 million, and we have IFC and a company called InfraCredit in Nigeria. InfraCredit is going to give us 5 million, and we're at, you know, the last stage of the fundraise, and currently what is holding us back is $1 million of equity. And then IFC is there waiting. Okay, when we finish the due diligence, we're going to give you 14 million. But hope you have your equity signed up. And I'm thinking, everybody I've reached out to raise equity as a woman, I don't know, but I see the men raising this equity. I don't know why I'm not able to raise it yet. And this is what I want to do with this work.
I want to immediately come to you, Jody, because you are passionate about getting money into the hands of women. What advice do you have for Habiba? But I think for so many here who are struggling with that challenge.
So I really feel for what you're saying. And how many women here are entrepreneurs in the room? I'd just like to see your hand. So as you know, Black and brown women see less than 0.42% of venture capital. In the USA, that number has dropped. Women see less than 2.3. We just did a feasibility study in partnership with the New School to move these numbers to 10% in 10 years by engaging men. And the way we do this, there are already extraordinary men who understand that the diversification of capital is essential for a healthy financial system. And so what we learned in that study was that women tend to be too polite. And so we are now going to rate venture firms and private equity firms not engaged, minimum engagement, full engagement, so that it becomes more of a public discourse on this question of, are they actively looking for diverse opportunities to invest in? The second thing we're going to do is ask them to stand up every year and announce how much more capital they're going to attempt to move to women. And this may be from 0.25% to 0.5%. Doesn't matter. We're hoping that we can inspire a movement to move 10% of venture capital to women in 10 years. That could be trillions of dollars coming into the marketplace for women who have a feminized understanding of how capital nurtures life. And so we say at Women Funding the World, we have a gathering called Women Funding the World for men and women who are allocating capital to living systems and to equity. We say that capital is love, right? And so we talk about, movements like the fossil fuel movement, things like that. I believe that if we really inspire men and women to understand that we nurture life with capital, it's feeding everything, and that the transformation of capital has to be an inspiration with men, and I believe men can help us solve the problem.
Absolutely. I also think it's about getting more women to those deal-making tables, making decisions. And I was
going to say women aren't allowed at the table, and that's the challenge. Yeah.
I recently joined the board of All Raise because that is their whole mission, is how do we get more women in the decision-making seats? Who decides who gets funded? Because so many women entrepreneurs, they experience something, and that's why they create their business. And if the guy has not experienced this, he's not, he doesn't understand why you'd want to create that business. Tatiana, talk a little bit about your experience. First, tell us a little bit about I always have to pull it out here. I want to make sure I print Permalution. Tell us a little bit about how you founded it, what it does. I know your inspiration came from a backpacking trip, I believe, but also the challenges that you have faced in getting investments, particularly as a woman leading a technology-based solution.
Yes, absolutely. So, Permalution, we are a Canadian-based startup. We work on technology for cloud and fog water collection. So, as rain is vertical precipitation, clouds and fog are horizontal precipitation. And we can get up to 3 times more water than rain. So, we're technically milking clouds and using the water for different applications. And unlike rain, if we don't collect this water source, it goes back into the atmosphere through temperature change and is lost from the local hydrate cycle. We are doing the biomimicry that redwood sequoias, they do. They're so tall because they irrigate on fog and clouds. So we added some advanced materials, AI, and some really cool innovation into this very old practice. And the way that this solution came to me was right after university. It was always my dream to go to California. I brought my backpack for 2 weeks. And it was the first time that I was in a drought-impacted situation. It was one of the worst drought seasons in the state's history. And I remember looking out the window after hearing that the US had lost over $250 billion because of the drought. And even more shocking to me was to learn that farmers were taking their lives because of the economic losses brought from the irrigation cuts. And I remember looking out the window in San Francisco and I couldn't see anything because of the fog. And I had my eureka moment. I thought, why are we not using this water source? These are tons of water that's passing above our heads. So that's how it started. I ended up spending a whole year in California working on the technology. I entered the largest clean tech accelerator program in North America, Singularity University. And then the rest, it was very hard as a Canadian to get the permits, the funding, and everything needed to deploy a first pilot. So I came back to Canada. I used to work for the federal government. They offered me a job in Mexico for a year. I did a great program to transform vacant lots into living pharmacies, edible forests. We developed apps to connect the gardens and so on. Then Bosch hired me as their head of innovation in Mexico. And after 3 years of turning back to the dark side in the corporate world and giving a talk in a museum to over 600 people on all the technology and clean tech projects I had been involved in, someone in the audience came to me after and said, we actually need your fog and cloud solution you were talking about. We have a lot of drought. 80% of the year we have fog and clouds. And we'll give you anything you need, resources, access to place everything. So in 2019, I restarted the whole team. A bunch of my Bosch people came to me. And we launched the whole project again in 2020. We built our first project for wildfire mitigation in Mexico and conservation of wild orchids on the brink of extinction. The project has been running ever since. We have introduced about 7,000 units of these orchids back into nature with a 75% survival rate. And we use that case study to then go into other markets, find shorter sales cycles. We're also now tapping into a new type of floating water. We're doing industrial steam recycling, starting with data centers. They consume a lot of water. Instead of naturally horizontal occurring fog, we're tapping into vertically induced steam. And yes, we had a big transition at the end of last year. We had about 1.5 million in impact projects that were approved by USAID, by the World Wildlife Foundation. They were all put on hold at the beginning of the year and then completely they evaporated because of the executive orders. So we pursued the private sectors that have a lot of need for water and are exposed to fog and clouds. So we have an algorithm that tells us where the equation of fog and clouds meet in a region for us to collect it as a water source. So once we identify these hotspots or fog spots, we set up a unit of measuring. We call it the water radar. It's a set of sensors that tell us how much water we're going to get in that point from fog and clouds versus rain, what's the quality of the water. We build a cost-benefit analysis, ROI, impact metrics, everything. And then the big collecting units are these fog collectors, passive membranes that work without energy. We have done fully remote projects.
So our biggest markets right now are in the Middle East, cement, mining industry, food and beverage, agriculture. But we don't want to leave the impact projects behind. We're still pushing to get that financing. We're planning on eventually building our own foundation and fuel our own projects. We cannot depend on the continuation of these projects to be, we had the experience in that, so we have to be more resilient as well. But at the beginning of the year, we didn't know what was happening. We were in the process of closing our fundraising round. Because of that, it took us 8 additional months to close it. We just closed our second fundraising round, so I can breathe a little bit again. But it's been a challenge. Same thing. I'm like, we have products, we have IP, we have sales, we have exponential growth, and I'm battling. I'm literally going crazy. Sometimes I see this colleagues or counterparts that have an idea in a napkin and they get funding right away.
Yeah.
And it's been a challenge. Yeah.
We need the Women's Network, don't we?
We do.
So I know that we've only got about a minute left, and I want to just go to each of you to say, what is the one thing you want everyone in this room to take away from the few hours of conversations that we've had? I mean, so many topics covered, from the link between the rise of violence against women and climate, obviously the need for money, the need to shut down fossil fuel, political will. What is the one thing that you want everyone in this room to take away and put into action? Because I know Daughters for Earth believes very much in the hummingbird. The little bits of water can put out the fire.
Yeah. So Women Funding the World and Chloe Capital, we move capital. And so what I want to say to women in the room here is, instead of feeling an anxiety around capital as energy, that you're going to ask for something, is it enough value? Will they like you? I want to inspire all of us to step in our power about what gift we're giving to a potential investor or philanthropist to invest in that is transformative for them. That paradigm shift alone will enable you to walk into a room with confidence with your brilliant project and really be clear about why it's of value to them. Money is energy, money is love. Invite them in with their capital to experience something that's transformative to them.
Thank you. Habiba?
For me, it will be for everyone to dig deep within and find the reason. What can I also add to reduce it, and when I say dig deep, it's not just about you alone. It's thinking about the networks that you work with, the people that you touch every day, and looking at them and feeling, for everything that we do and I do with you, what can we get together that we can add to the value of reducing the pressures of the world as well. So everybody has an answer. We are all the solution, and we need to know and take that ownership and find that solution.
Tatiana?
Yeah, so I totally agree. For me, one of the main recommendations is to dare to dream big. For me, the biggest threat of our planet is the belief that someone else will do something about it or that someone else will change it. And this might sound cliche, but if the dreams we have don't scare us, we're not dreaming big enough. And that's one of the big steps to do. And
Thank
follow your
you.
gut feeling.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. So we're going to invite our poetess back up to close us out here. But thank you all for being with us. And let's hear some final words of inspiration. Thank you to the team at Vital Voices, the team at Daughters for Earth, and really pulling together such an incredible discussion. Thank you all for staying until the end.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much. Oh, can you hear me? Okay, my voice is kind of crazy. I just want to say thank you so much for having me here as a sister and just as a daughter of the earth as well. I'm going to share the poem Mama. And what I want to say is that as someone from Darfur, and in reference, if anyone who knows about the Darfur genocide knows desertification was a huge part of it. And anyone who knows about the famines that preceded it, and even now, knows that women-headed households were the ones who survived. And so we are the last buffer between society and all that remains, between chaos and all that remains. And that's how I came to write this poem. about my matriarchs and all of the matriarchs in my family. I hope it inspires you the way that they inspired me and the way everyone here has inspired all of us. Called Mama, and it's a fun one, so I hope you like it. So I'm walking down the street when a man stops me and says, "Hey, yo, sister, are you from the motherland?" Because my skin is a shade too dark not to have come from foreign soil. Because this garment on my head screams Africa. Because my body is a beacon calling everyone to come flock to the motherland. I'm like, yeah, I'm from Sudan. Why? He said, yes, you is, because you got a little bit of flavor in you. Don't get me wrong. I'm just admiring what your mama gave you. Let me tell you something about my mama. She can reduce a man to tattered flesh without so much as blinking. Her words fester beneath your skin, and the whole time you won't be able to stop cradling her eyes because my mama is a woman, flawless and formidable in the same step. Woman walks into a war zone and has warriors cowering at her feet. My mama holds all of us in her face, in her body, in her blood, and blood is no good once you let it loose, so she always holds us close, keeping us safe from caving in. When I was 7, my mama cradled bullets in the billows of her robes. The same night she came home and taught me how to get gunpowder out of cotton with a bar of soap. Years later, when the soldiers held her at gunpoint and asked her who she was, she said, "I am a daughter of Adam, Ana Bani Adam. Who the hell are you?" And the last time we went home, we watched our village burn. We watched our village burn. Soldiers pouring blood from civilian skulls as if they too could turn water into wine. The woman who raised me turned and said, "Don't be scared. I'm your mother. I'm here. I won't let them through." My mama gave me conviction. Women like her inherit bruised wrists, tired eyes, and titanium-plated spines. The daughters of widows wearing the wings of amputees that carry countries between their shoulder blades. Now, I'm not saying that dating is a first world problem, but these trifling guys seem to be. The kind who'll quote Rumi, but not know what he sacrificed for war, who fawn over Lupita, but turn their racial filters on, who take their politics with a latte when I take mine with tear gas. Every guy I meet wants to be my introduction to the dark side, wants me to open up this obsidian skin and let him read every tearful page, because what survivor hasn't had her struggle made spectacle? Don't talk about the motherland unless you know that being from Africa means waking up an afterthought in this country. Don't talk about my flavor unless you know that my flavor is insurrection. It is rebellion. It is resistance. My flavor is grit, and it is compromise, and you don't know compromise till you rebuilt your home for the third time without bricks, without mortar, without any other option. I turned to the man and said, "My mother and I don't walk the streets alone back home anymore. Back home, there are no streets to walk anymore." Thank you.